Fast forwarding a few years, I PCS'd out to Germany, a Landstuhl Regional Medical Center, also trauma critical care. And we spent 7 years air evacuating the critically wounded, actually about 10,000 critically wounded. We would go down to Africa, Kosovo, the Middle East, Iraq, Afghanistan, Kuwait. I remember one time I brought my wife up to the hospital just to see an example of how I got a patient ready for flight. She'd come with me up into the ICU, and we see the patient coming out of the operating room on a bed, and wrapped up, white cloth bandages, looked like a mummy with a tube sticking out and just on life support. When we get the patient into the room, and we spend the next few hours trying to resuscitate the patient. I still remember vividly, along with other patients I cared for, I still remember vividly trying to resuscitate the patient. Just you start CPR, and as soon as you put your hands on the chest, with the first compression, you can feel the ribs separate, snap away from the sternum. But a little bit more vividly is each time I pressed on this patient's chest, those white bandages gradually turned from white to red. And so the patient was bandaged up because 85–90% burn, very low survival rate. But we continued for a few hours. The family was in France and was on their way to see that we were trying to do everything possible. Another example, in flight, as a critical care air transport team taking 6 critically wounded patients on life support, up constantly, flying from Germany to DC and then on to Texas, just staying awake 20 hours or so caring for these patients, critically wounded. I remember one time the aircrafts were aerial refueling. There was an aircraft right above us, just aerial refueling, and we were not allowed to move. During a refuel, you sat still and quiet, and you can hear the aircraft right above you refueling. And we see a patient who wasn't even ours. His head was bandaged up from a gunshot, and during the aerial refuel, he sat up. I saw on his monitor that he went to a lethal arrhythmia, and then he collapsed back down. There was a lot of commotion because the medical team, we want to rush right to his bedside, right to the side of his litter, and start immediate resuscitation, but we weren't allowed to move because we're being aerial refueled. We weren't allowed to defibrillate. The patient needed to be defibrillated to be resuscitated. We couldn't do that either. The medical team is raising our voices because it's so loud already in the aircraft, and we want to do what we can to save the patient's life. And at the same time, the front-end crew of the aircraft is telling us that if we defibrillate the patient, it could cause sparks and an explosion and cost the lives of both of the aircraft. And some of those memories come back and continue to haunt me. And at first, when those people would pop into my mind, I have questions. Did I do everything that I could? Did I give the right medications at the right time? Did I do CPR correctly? And all of the shoulda, coulda, wouldas. Wondering if the patient survived, what the family's doing. Sometimes there's anniversary dates when I remember during a certain time of the year, I just spend some time thinking about that patient. Sometimes it would just put me into a depression for a little while as I was just wondering while I was struggling with some of these thoughts. There's thousands of them I just shared too. Now what I do is when I'm reminded of those patients, I lift their family in prayer. I speak peace over their family. I have no idea what their names are. I can't reach out to them through social media to say that I did the best that I could, but I can offer a prayer over their family.